over a judge's effort to block deportations of accused gang members.
Today in court, the DOJ got straight to the president's power. Drew Ensign, the DOJ attorney, said the district court's order represents an unprecedented and enormous intrusion among the powers of the executive branch.
Fox's David Spond at federal court in D.C., one of the three judges hearing the appeal, suggesting suspects who claim they're not gang members had no chance to demonstrate that before being flown to El Salvador. The case could end up before the U.S. Supreme Court. There may be exceptions to upcoming Trump tariffs.
President Trump says he may give a lot of countries breaks on a plan to add reciprocal tariffs on imports coming into the U.S. beginning on April 2nd.
For the most part, April 2nd will be a big day. That'll be reciprocal day. And we'll be bringing some of the money back that's been taken from us. Let's be nice by using the word taken.
The president says the plan is to put the same tariff on imports that countries charge for exports from the U.S. He also says countries purchasing oil or gas from Venezuela could face an additional 25% tariff on goods imported to the U.S.
Fox's Jared Halpern at the White House. The president says tariffs are why manufacturers are beginning to invest more in the U.S., including a $20 billion investment by Hyundai. That includes a steel plant in Louisiana. Governor Landry at the White House for today's announcement, along with House Speaker Mike Johnson.
People are excited. There's this great sense of relief, almost euphoria out there, because they know that America's back. This is the America First agenda.
The House Democratic leader has accused the president of crashing the economy. The FBI launching a task force to investigate Tesla-related threats and attacks. FBI Director Kash Patel calls it domestic terrorism. The Dow up 597 at the bell. America is listening to Fox News.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
A warning on HIV, but an offer for President Trump.
Last month, the U.S. government ended funding for the United Nations agency fighting AIDS. The head of UNAIDS today warning that sudden halt to American money has been devastating. But Executive Director Winnie Byanyima has what she calls an amazing deal for President Trump, one that could result in the end of AIDS. Byanyima says if the Trump administration allows drug company Gilead to produce and license lenacapavir, a new preventative medicine, it could be a healthcare revolution. U.S. funding made up more than a third of UNAIDS' core budget last year. Jonathan Savage, Fox News.
Jewish activists are saying a Palestinian co-director of the Oscar-winning film No Other Land has been detained by the Israeli military after being attacked by Israeli settlers in the West Bank and in the same area where that documentary had chronicled the struggle by residents to stop the Israeli military from demolishing their villages. The military says it's investigating today's report. A jury in Georgia says a chemical manufacturing giant has to pay billions over a man's claim its weed killer caused cancer.
Following a lawsuit in Cobb County, Georgia, outside Atlanta, a jury is awarding more than $2 billion to a man who sued the chemical company Monsanto, now owned by Bayer, claiming their lawn care product Roundup caused non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a type of cancer. Bayer has long denied the weed killer was causing illness, though they've set aside billions to settle more than 100,000 different lawsuits on the matter. At heart is the chemical component glyphosate, which the FDA says likely isn't cancer-causing if used as directed. Bayer plans to appeal the verdict. Eben Brown, Fox News.
Recapping stocks, the Dow and the S&P up more than 1%, the NASDAQ up more than 2%. Elisa Brady, Fox News.
Hello again, everyone. Let's check weather for East Central Illinois, Champaign and vicinity, coming off a scattering weekend rainfall yesterday in particular. Things relatively quiet from a spring storm standpoint for this week, with a weak system due in between tomorrow and tomorrow night off by Wednesday. And signs of a pattern shift. Some of this evolving and developing heat over the southwestern sections of the country, back into the plains and over sections of the Corn Belt as we move on through the end part of the week, into the weekend, much of next week as well. Trade-off for any early season field work across the area, increasing rainfall prospects, but again, much needed with dryness and drought in mind. Mostly sunny, windy for the day today up to 53. The west wind 20 to 30 and gusty, but diminishing over the afternoon. Increasing clouds for tonight. A few sprinkles after midnight down to 37. Lighter wind tomorrow, considerable cloudiness. Just a spot of light rain in the morning and later in the afternoon. A lot of dry hours. 54 with light winds will bottom out at 34. And a touch of light rain for tomorrow night. Partly sunny, 56 on Wednesday. Thursday into Friday, warm up into the 60s. Thursday, 70s on Friday. Scattered showers too. For Stevie G Broadcasting, I'm meteorologist Greg Soldier.
Yeah, that game was decided at the start of the game and the start of the second half. Pretty much described by 26 points off turnovers. So 13 of our 14 turnovers were live ball. You can't turn the ball over. Give them credit. I think this is Lamont Butler's 12th NCAA tournament game. I thought he controlled the game on both sides and was extremely effective on the defensive side. But turnovers at the start of the second half. We got a big play into the first half, loose ball that we don't come up with and put them on the line. We got to cut to 3. Our guys fought, our guys competed, our guys played hard. It's a night that the other night we go 18 of 18 from the foul line. Tonight we miss a few. Give them a lot of credit. Kentucky defensively was really solid, and these two guys were excellent. Gave us every opportunity to try to get back in the game. We just couldn't get a stop, and the turnovers were the difference.
Hey, what's up? It's the Drive with Dan Piper, ESPN Radio 93.5. Derek Piper, Kyle Tosk. And that's where it ended for Illini basketball yesterday in Milwaukee, 84-75 in the round of 32. 3-seed Kentucky marches on to Indianapolis. Illinois, 22-win season, second round appearance and out. Did win a thrilling game there on Friday night against Xavier. Thrilling in terms of Illinois' performance. They were very clearly the better team. Will Riley goes off. KJ near triple-double. Tommy, who had a really good tournament. Kylan Boswell had a really good tournament and has a great month of March. But for a high-ceiling team, but also one that went through a roller coaster, that was a downturn. We were talking about it off the air, Kyle, of a little bit of an epitome of this season between the Xavier game, the excitement, the potential. If that's who you get from Illinois or what you get from Illinois on a given night, then they're dangerous. And then you see Kentucky and the Wildcats led for 37-plus minutes of that one, and it really wasn't a game down the stretch. So how you doing, man? First of all, welcome back. How was your break?
It was great. Yeah, it was great. It's the perfect week to have spring break. You just got multiple screens on of college hoops for 4 straight days. And my birthday in the middle of that break, too.
Happy
my
belated
21st birthday, which was great. But welcome back to you, too, from Milwaukee.
You.
I'm a little bit upset that we're not shipping you back out to Indy late this week, though, that you're just back now for good.
I know, right?
I'm nothing against you. I love seeing you, but I'm disappointed that you don't get to make another trip.
I didn't get to go to the Big Ten tournament because I was sick. So, yeah, I kind of had one to still give, right? Still another trip over to Indianapolis to make up for it. But, last year was a long, extended postseason run, which was a lot of fun, to the Elite Eight. Had to turn over the roster. And this team, which we talked throughout the year at different points, and Brad really captaining the ship of the upside and the talent and what this team could do. And we thought that it had the potential to make a run. As things went down the stretch, obviously you had the rocky 3-game losing streak in February and wondered if this postseason was going to have much at all to it other than some quick exits. To their credit, they rallied. They played a lot better basketball, made some progress, and did make some noise, although it was a very disappointing loss there against Maryland at the Big Ten tournament. And in Kentucky, I mean, I don't think anybody's sitting here today or after the game yesterday feeling like that wasn't the better team, or that the fact of Kentucky starting their starting five is 22 years or older versus Illinois is a much more inexperienced team, and that certainly showed itself. So I think the frustrating part about it, Kyle, is as we talked about leading up, and we had you on last week, like, this was a decent matchup on paper. At least the way you positioned yourself, you didn't have to play a 2 seed or a 1 seed in this game. You played a more vulnerable 3 seed line. We saw Iowa State yesterday be a banged up 3 seed that just got pummeled by Ole Miss. And Kentucky has been banged up. Kentucky's not a team defensively that's supposed to bother you. They're more let's try to outscore you, and that style is much more in line with what Illinois can hang with, because they can put points on the board, and when they're overwhelmed athletically or bothered with another team's defense, then obviously that can give them more problems. The fact that Kentucky doesn't turn you over and Illinois made turnovers really be the death of them was frustrating. How much your star freshman struggled. Will Riley, 5 points, 1 for 7 from the field, 3 turnovers. KJ, 6 turnovers. He ended up 13 points, 5 for 13, but he really, really struggled. So that's where it was frustrating, because it felt like this was an opportunity. I ended up picking Illinois in my preview. I called an audible in my bracket, and last week I said, hey, second round exit, I think Kentucky's going to beat Illinois. But the way I saw Illinois play on Friday, the way I saw Kentucky play against Troy and some of their games leading up to this one, they looked vulnerable, they looked beat up, but they were obviously the better team.
Yeah, I kind of bought in before the game, coming off the Xavier game, and heading into Kentucky, watching them play Troy and just how banged up Lamont Butler looked, who ended up looking like a stud in yesterday's game. And just, the matchup, the style, I thought Illinois would be comfortable, and I thought Illinois' offense and Illinois' freshmen were going to get what they wanted on Kentucky. I knew Kentucky was going to make shots. I knew they were going to score. But with how uncomfortable Illinois looked from the start of that game, how much KJ was bothered. Now, for as much as Kentucky has struggled defensively, Lamont Butler is an elite defender. He's like a 3-time all-conference defensive guy in the Mountain West, defensive player of the year, I think, 1 year there at San Diego State. He's really good. And Amari Williams is a freak in terms of what he can do on the defensive end. I mean, seeing him switch on to 4 different guys during that game, boy, I knew he was going to be a problem. But Illinois just was so uncomfortable early in the games. The unforced turnovers, I mean, it's just kind of been the story of this team. And the way they went out is probably pretty fitting for what this team was. You have a great performance. Your freshmen play like stars on a big stage that first round. You get anything you want. You start to get the fan base really buying into how dangerous could this team be, and then you're largely uncompetitive against Kentucky. Yeah, they competed till the end and made their runs, but Kentucky looked like the clear better team, controlled the game, led for 37 minutes. Feels like probably a pretty fitting way for this group to go out. A very inconsistent weekend to top off a very inconsistent year that, to me, was frustrating. Still, you still have to look at it like a 22-win season, getting a 6 seed in the tournament, 12-8 in the Big Ten. It's still a good season, but one that I think you're still always going to wonder, like, what could it have been? Did you waste some of the talent, especially those 2 freshmen? Could it have turned into more? We just never really saw it come to fruition.
No, yeah, I agree with all that, and we will zoom out, and we could definitely talk more big picture as far as evaluation of this past season and where it needs to go. I think another question you could ask is, does Illinois take a lesson from this and say, we don't want to be this young again? And is that something that you push forward and go, okay, our 2 best players, our 2 most talented guys, our 2 highest paid guys probably shouldn't be freshmen again? Maybe that's a take. Maybe it's not. I asked Brad Underwood yesterday, hey, from the youth, which he mentioned after this loss, he mentioned after Maryland, he's mentioned a lot, hey, we're really, really young, this and that. Like, okay, do you want to be young again going forward. Now, if you get guys back, obviously Kylan would then be a senior, and Trey White's a senior, and Tommy technically a junior, but it would be his second year in the program as a guy that would turn 22 years old, and Merez would have a year under his belt. And beyond that, you'd have to make decisions or speculate on who would come back, who would you want back. But as far as that goes, that was one thing that I wondered about after yesterday. And seeing the way the bracket went forward, I think that Illini fans were very keen to the fact that even if you beat Kentucky, it was going to be a steep hill to climb because of the type of teams we were afraid of for this squad, and it's been pretty evident for a while now. Waited for you there in the second weekend, like the idea of facing Tennessee again, the idea of facing Houston. Like if Illinois had 14 turnovers and gave Kentucky 26 points off of turnovers, Kentucky, what would that have looked like against Tennessee? What would that have looked like against Houston? If you were in a different bracket and you ended up having to play Auburn or Florida, some of these more athletic squads, these older teams, that's where I told you off the air who Illinois became, and not that you don't have to worry about ceiling anymore. We don't have to worry about upside, what this team can do, where they can go. But I did have this thought, Kyle, of who Illinois ultimately was down the stretch. A team that, again, a lot of your primary guys were young. Your main ball handler was an 18-year-old who was mistake-prone and wasn't playing very well the last 4 to 6 weeks of the season, and particularly. You were a team that prioritized shooting and skill, and yet you were 304th in three-point shooting. You weren't all that tough. You weren't all that athletic. You weren't a great defensive team. This version of Illinois that we learned about didn't play itself to really be that high of a ceiling team, in my opinion. I'm not. It's the tournament. Anything can happen. And yes, when the talent played itself out like it did against Xavier, then you see what they could do in a given night. I just think we were reminded against Kentucky, we were reminded against Maryland, we were reminded against some of these other teams that when they're facing an older group, when they're facing a more athletic group, when they're facing that's a tougher challenge, that it was just going to be hard for them to reach a high peak this year.
I think that's definitely fair. To me, I look at it realizing that I think there was definitely the capability to have a better season than this with this roster. I still think this roster, I mean, you talked about how it's one of the highest paid rosters in the conference, and it's not like you swung and missed a ton in terms of who these guys were. It's not like, it's not, I mean, I kind of try to compare it to Indiana a little bit, even though they had talent too. I just think coaching was a huge problem for them. But they just swung and missed on a really highly paid roster, and you could see it from the start of the season.
Kansas State did that.
Kansas State did a great comparison.
Kansas paid a lot and didn't have nearly the year that they were expected to have.
And I think part of that is what happened to Illinois, but I also think as you saw the season play out, the reason that ceiling kept popping up as a term that we used and just the potential of this team is because you did actually see it on the floor plenty of times this season. And you saw a lot of these individual players play really good basketball. And I do think the point is valid in that, okay, there was always going to be the volatility and the inconsistency when your two highest usage guys, at least down the stretch of the year, were two freshmen. One that just turned 19, one that I think is still 18, if I'm not mistaken. That was always going to be. I mean, we even have seen this with some of the high-tier one-and-done Kentucky teams and Duke teams. There's been inconsistencies galore with those teams. You're already walking a tightrope with that type of roster build, going all in on that. But I do think that I don't necessarily know if I want to use the word underachieved, but I think that there was a lot of meat left on the bone for this team that we never really got to see play out, and I think there's a lot of different reasons for that. I certainly do think that some of the disruption they had, I know it gets tiring to hear for a month straight when Brad Underwood talked about it, the sickness and all that stuff. I do think that was part of it because we started to really see these last 3 weeks, we started to see things. Kylan Boswell playing his best basketball. Thomas Slavovicic back in the mix. It looked like your freshman, especially Will Riley, was breaking through. If we could have seen that in late January and had a month to still go through the inconsistencies, then maybe had things straighten out towards the tournament. I would have liked to see how that looked. I just think ultimately it was a fine season. I do think that based on the talent you had on this roster and based on the two freshmen being who they were from a talent perspective, I think you could have been better. I think you could have, but I think there were obvious flaws, as you alluded to, with this team. I think this team had matchups that really could hurt them, and I think we started to see that play out towards the end of the season, even though, like you said, I don't really have an explanation for why they look so spooked in this Kentucky matchup, because it felt great going. It felt like a great matchup going in, and maybe it is just a team that was never going to really put it together for a long period of time.
I do want to continue forward with the big picture feeling on the season, and I know where everybody's mind is right now is, okay, what now? Who is going to come back? What will that look like? Who should we want back? Maybe Kyle and I, is there an updated who you want back? Is there any shift in the power rankings as far as who you want back the most on this roster, and then what this roster needs going forward? But before we completely pivot off the Kentucky game, is there anything that Illinois could have done differently to make this more of a winnable outcome? Is there anything that you noticed that was controllable enough to where Illinois could have put themselves in a much better position to win the game?
I don't really know if there's one thing. For starters, sitting in drop coverage on Kobe Brea is ridiculous. That can't. I mean, after the first jumper he hits, timeout. Let's get this figured out, because if they went to him 4 straight times, he made 4 straight shots. That could have maybe kept you in the game a little bit longer. I don't know. I think maybe you could have gone away from KJ earlier, just as kind of the primary ball handler, and just knowing. You can kind of see early with him when he just doesn't have it or when he's bothered by a matchup. You knew Kentucky was going to put Butler on him. Butler really bothered him like the first 3 minutes of the game. Maybe right then you say, all right, we need our veteran. Kylan Boswell's got to take this ball right now, and we'll try to get KJ involved off the ball. We'll try to mix him in here and there, especially maybe if Butler goes off the floor or whatnot. Maybe that could have helped, because I do think that Kylan was really the one guy offensively that stepped up and had the aggression and the assertiveness and just that veteran steadying presence with the ball in his hands that you needed in this game. But does that change the result? I don't know. It was just the start of both halves that got you in such a deep hole. And the first half it was turnovers. The second half it was part turnovers, but part you couldn't stop anything for like 12 straight possessions. And we can talk about maybe some defensive stuff, because I think this team showed some really concerning defensive things down the stretch that really, to go back to your original point, probably did limit their ceiling. But I don't know if there's necessarily one thing. I just think Kentucky, ultimately, you kind of try to talk yourself into, Illinois was one spot higher on KenPom. Illinois was a favorite going into this game. I just think Kentucky was the older, more experienced, and better, well-rounded basketball team in the game, and I think that probably would have played out in most scenarios.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And this version of Lamont Butler, because you looked at his Troy game, didn't make a shot. I think he was 0 for 5 from the field. You watched it, and he was hesitant offensively. He would get into the lane and want to pass it out. Just looked really like a shell of himself. And I'm not talking that, his only attribute is scoring, because he can dish it out. He's a very good defender, like you said. But for him to have a 14-point, 5-assist, 3-steal game, make 2 threes, he was 1 for 11 from 3 in his previous 8 games combined, and he made 2 in that game. So for him to play that well, I wrote up in the preview, hey, if Boswell's going to guard Oweh, which Oweh was in foul trouble in the first half, had a decent game ultimately, but didn't kill you, can Illinois have Boswell on Oweh and do a good enough job otherwise on Brea? And obviously the answer was no, especially in that second half. And KJ was the matchup for Brea, and he struggled chasing him through screens, and part of it was the coverage as well that just didn't give him a great chance, or anyone there to have a real ability to slow him down. And just some of the makeup of Kentucky, like the fact that Amari Williams can switch onto anybody on the perimeter. Like, he was switched onto Will Riley because I didn't think Kentucky had a good matchup for Will Riley. Looking at this game at the forefront, Will couldn't get by him, and Will would get into the kind of the in between and get hesitant. KJ was shell shocked and played a hesitant basketball game. That was the one area I was going to go, and you brought it up, so we're in line there. That it was obvious that Kylan could get by somebody because Illinois was having a problem doing that, and was aggressive at the rim and actually dished out assists, 6 assists for him. Could you have emphasized, like, our offense has to run through Kylan earlier in this game? Now, you still would have had to find a way to get some more stops to probably win it, but that is an area where continuing to play through KJ it didn't work. Now, one overarching thought here, and I want to, while we're on the topic, want to get your thoughts too. Man, the version of Kylan as you got in March gives you so much confidence into who he can be for this team going into his senior season. And he talks like a guy that is fully intent on coming back. He mentioned how important it is from a leadership standpoint, which that's a big deal too. He's a leader. He's huge for your culture, that he wants to do everything he can to keep a strong core together. I love how Kylan trended down the stretch, and this is another game that I think gives him momentum into the offseason. He had a really frustrating finish to his sophomore season at Arizona, really faded down the stretch in postseason play. He was tremendous in postseason play and throughout March for Illinois.
I think he's going to be an absolute monster next year. I want to have the conversation again because he's making a push towards the very top of the list of guys I want back after what he did towards the end of the season. To me, he stepped up from a leadership perspective and just from a mentality perspective that you could see on the floor of that veteran presence that you need. That makes me really optimistic about what he could be in that role for next year's team as a senior. It just felt like he was so confident and assertive and you know, as a guy for much of the year to me that just was very passive in what he did, what his role is on this team. Part of that was by design because you were running so much through KJ, and then really your secondary stuff was Tommy or Will, and Kylan was just kind of a piece trying to fit in. Down the stretch of the year, he would just take the ball and go, and take the ball, and you know, when some other guys were struggling, he would be the assertive, aggressive leader for this offense and just for this team. Obviously, what he's done defensively all season, I think, has been spectacular, but the way he finished the year offensively, I think, should not be overlooked because that's a guy I think could turn into one of the better guards in the Big Ten next year. And, I mean, remember back in like mid-January when we said he couldn't finish at the rim, he can't make a layup? I don't know if he missed a shot at the rim the last month of the year. He finished through contact. The take he had on Amari Williams when he got the switch, when he left him in the dust and went up and around the bucket. And then even the three-point shooting came around towards the end of the year. And I'd maintain that he will be a good three-point shooter next year because a guy doesn't just go from shooting it well his whole life to shooting 22% all of a sudden. That was always weird. I think that was very confidence-driven, and he started to get confidence back. You could see the swagger he was playing with towards the end of the year, and I think with that, started making some threes and was awesome defensively, I thought, down the stretch of the year. What he did on Conwell on Friday night was spectacular. So I think he is the biggest positive of the end of the season and one that I am fired up about what he could be next season.
Yeah, if you didn't have him to put on Ryan Conwell, you're maybe not playing on Sunday.
Yeah.
Because you know what he's capable of.
That dude had 38 points against Marquette, who's got elite perimeter defenders. I mean, Stevie Mitchell is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate nationally. He had 38 on Marquette.
Insane. And I just, like you said, the confidence, the swagger, aggressiveness, I loved it. And one of the big differences, and not to pile on KJ, but the fact of there were like consecutive possessions where KJ gets a switch on Amari Williams and he takes a three, like in his face. And I just don't understand a lot of times. We're like, all right, I got a 7-footer on me. That's even a guy who can maybe get a hand up even further to contest his shot. I'm going to take a three on him. Kylan gets the switch on Amari and dances with him and goes right by and makes him look silly. Like that was a difference, whether it's a veteran, whether it's just the mentality that KJ wasn't making great sound decisions a whole lot down the stretch, at least not consistently enough. And Kylan did there to make it happen. So I want to talk more defense. Let's catch a break, because I think this will go for a while. A lot of people really beating the drum as far as the scheme, the roster build. Like, this wasn't a team that when they were disappointing, they really struggled to get stops. We saw Maryland light them up. Obviously, Duke went 110. Kentucky doesn't look, 84 points doesn't look so gaudy on paper, but we saw, like you said, what that second half looked like when you couldn't get stops. So I want to talk about that as far as this game, but also pushing forward, and we'll do a lot of that conversation with the roster and what Illinois should be emphasizing going into the transfer portal, going into this next roster build. 217-359-2255. Hit us up on the Max Twin City Recycling text line with your thoughts and your questions. We'll be back. This is The Drive.
At ABC, it's your chance to get that air conditioner and furnace you've needed. ABC Heating and Air Conditioning can now offer 12 months same as cash, 9.9% financing, or up to $2,000 cash back on residential Amana units. Whether you need a furnace and or air conditioner, you can take advantage of this deal through the end of March. ABC means always be comfortable. Let locally and family-owned ABC take care of you. Call Gina today at 217-352-5400 or visit abcheatingandac.com.
The season for madness is here, and Jets Pizza has the perfect game time deal. For a limited time, score 2 one-top large pizzas plus a Coke 2-liter for just $29.99. That's right, big flavor, big savings, and the perfect way to enjoy Jets while watching the games. Use promo code PM1. That's promo code PM1 for some pizza madness. Available in deep dish, hand-tossed round, thin, or New York style with any crust flavoring. 2 large one-top pizzas and a Coke 2-liter. The Jets Pizza Madness Special. It's not just pizza, it's Jets.
Are you ready to upgrade your home this spring? Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing has got the sale for you. Now through the end of March, offering a free water heater with the purchase of a new HVAC system, or 60 months, 0% interest on financing for a new HVAC system. It's the biggest sale of the year. Call Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing at 217-841-4728. Get a free quote for your home today. It's 217-841-4728. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend.
It's time to plan your summer swimming season. Urbana Park District is selling pool memberships to Crystal Lake Park Family Aquatic Center. Memberships are on sale through April. The pool opens Memorial Day weekend. Single, family, senior, and veteran rates available. Purchase memberships in person at Phillips Recreation Center, 505 West Stoughton, or at Urbana Indoor Aquatic Center. Call 217-367-1544 for details. Urbana Park District, you belong here.
Sarah Champagne Managing Partner Ben Quattrone.
We're always looking for people. You can go online and apply on our website. We never know what we're going to need. We're always expanding. We're always building more and growing our business. If we don't need a person and they come along and we find out that they're an eagle, they're a star, we'll hire them. We'll put them somewhere and wait for the spot we're going to have them working.
Learn more at sarahchampagne.com.
I need to speak with someone in charge, a manager. Who's the manager?
Yes, ma'am. This is Paul Reekin from Dick Van Dyke Appliance World. How can we help out?
Picture this, Paul from Dick Van Dyke, if that's your real name.
I'm also not wearing khakis, but go ahead.
I get home from work and I need a cold drink with ice. And instead of feeling that cool, refreshing air, I get warm air and a whiff of rotten meat.
That's gross.
So here's what I need, Paul from Dick Van Dyke. I need a new refrigerator.
We have hundreds in stock.
Don't get fresh with me, mister.
Excuse me?
I need it delivered tomorrow.
We have next day delivery guaranteed Monday through Saturday.
I want it at this price.
We guarantee the best deal.
I want an extended protection plan.
I'll give you one for free.
Now, don't get smart with me, young man.
No joke. It's free, and I'm 49.
Well, wow.
That's what we say, but why did you ask for a manager?
How else would I get this deal?
You don't need the manager. We do this for everyone, every day at Dick Van Dyke Appliance World. And just like Dad says, wow.
When you buy from us, you get the whole store.
It's time for an Illinois Race Weekend Minute brought to you by Christie Clinic.
Hey runners, it's Macy Silkowski, certified athletic trainer with Christie Clinic Department of Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. It's almost time to lace up those shoes and hit the pavement for race day. But remember, a safe run is a successful run. Before the starting gun, take the time to warm up those muscles. Dynamic stretches and light jogging can prep your body for the road ahead. During the race, focus on your posture, stride, and foot strike. Small adjustments can make a big difference in preventing injuries. Whether you're a marathoner or a casual jogger, listen to your body. Don't ignore pain or discomfort. It's your body's way of telling you to ease off. And when you cross that finish line, don't forget to cool down and stretch. Treat your body with the care it deserves. Stay safe, stay strong, and keep chasing your dreams.
This Illinois Race Weekend Minute has been brought to you by Christie Clinic.
For more details on Marathon Weekend, April 25th and 26th, visit IllinoisMarathon.com.
You've set your financial goals. One kid plans to go Big Ten, the other Ivy. Your bucket list includes seaside sunrises and sunsets on the slopes, or perhaps a second home away from it all. Busey Bank can help develop the right investment strategy to take charge of the years ahead. Busey Bank, building business, growing wealth since 1868. Proud to be the official bank of the Fighting Illini. Member FDIC.
Back on the drive with Sam Piper, ESPN Radio 93.5. Continue to send your texts in, 217-359-2255 on the Max Twin City Recycling text line. We'll get to those as we go along. All right, Kyle, let's talk some defense. This is a squad that was a known weakness going into postseason play. If you look, February 1st and on, Illinois 124th or thereabouts in defensive efficiency. I struggle with this a little bit from a schematic standpoint. I know a lot of people complaining about the drop coverage. I didn't listen to the broadcast or the halftime. Oh, I guess it sounds like Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith actually had something to say about the game on Sunday's halftime as opposed to Friday.
The first two plays that Charles Barkley watched of the whole tournament, I think, were those two plays in the first half where Illinois got torched by, I forget, was it Butler who torched it? I can't even. It was before. It was at halftime. But yeah, Charles Barkley said, "I think those are two of the worst defensive possessions I've ever seen."
Wow,
so,
wow. Can you fill us in on what that conversation was like? I had heard it was mentioned on the broadcast. I know that Seth Greenberg tweeted about how terrible Illinois' drop coverage was.
I didn't watch the halftime closely. I saw the Barkley part, but I didn't. I was kind of.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I don't really care to watch that. Show.
You're not sitting there. Nobody's sitting there thinking, all right, here comes some real like groundbreaking analysis from these guys. But ultimately, okay, in terms of just what we saw with our own eyes, and this goes beyond the Kentucky game as well. Illinois has had shortcomings defensively. There have been critiques as far as just maybe being a little too stubborn or not adjusting enough, not being dynamic enough in terms of what you can throw at teams. Now, they did make the pivot later in the year after Duke to do a little bit of different stuff in ball screen action, and I know Kylan Boswell had a big hand in that of mentioning, hey, give me a little help on some of these screens to let me get back in front. I do think Illinois roster construction-wise is limited. When Tommy's your 5, Can you get up and do a whole lot else different in terms of you're not switching like Amari Williams can. You're not blitzing a whole lot. And even just in general, whatever you're going to run, if you aren't the quickest team, if you're not super athletic and whatnot, like you're going to have a hard time bothering people, which it was a rarity that anyone was uncomfortable running their offense against Illinois outside of going up against Kylan Boswell. And that's kind of where I land on it. Like Illinois really has one bona fide plus defender in Kylan, and outside of that, you have a lot of average to below average. And even Merez late in the year, I don't give him too much. I don't want to be too harsh on him because the guy didn't practice very much and obviously got out of rhythm when he broke his wrist. But his 2 tournament games were pretty rough defensively.
I agree with you that for this year's team, I think the personnel on the roster is really what the issue was defensively, more so than the scheme. Although I think that I just would like to see Illinois adapt a little bit more defensively. They're just so singular in what they do and have for so long now. Obviously, like you said, when you have Tommy out there, when you have Kofi Coburn out there, you don't have a ton of options because you're going to get picked apart if you try to play aggressive with those two guys, and those two guys are having to cover space and recover. That's going to open up even more problems than drop coverage is going to open up for you. I think ultimately the shortcomings of this year's roster defensively were personnel based, because for as good as those two freshmen, KJ and Will, were offensively, those guys really struggled defensively a lot of this year. They both had moments at times, but KJ yesterday, horrendous defensively, just really, really bad. And he had times this year where he just really struggled. I think Will, screen navigation for him was a big problem, I think, throughout the year for Will. When he was on guys that would run off screens, he'd get caught up a lot and just wasn't quite quick enough and physical enough to really fight through those. And obviously when you have Humrickhouse out there, I think he's limited. I think Tommy himself is pretty limited in what he can do. And yeah, you said it. Like, Kylan Boswell was the one guy you could rely on. Even he had a stretch where he wasn't guarding all that well. But for the most part, he was awesome on the defensive end. And then you just couldn't really trust anybody else. And I just think within games, sitting in the coverage they did on Kobe Brea, once you see that happen, you got to make some type of adjustment, because, to let him, those are layups for him. To get the open shots that he got, those are layups for a guy like him. He's probably the best shooter in the country. I think the scheme that Illinois plays, the problem I have with it is, it's just so easy to scout for and prepare for, because it's all Illinois really does. They threw in some wrinkles late in the year, and then they really went away from it in the tournament. And it was just you know what you're getting with Illinois. And I think it was very easy to prepare for. There wasn't a lot that teams had to read coming off screens or had to react to. It's just, this is what you're going to get. And I think when you're playing really high-level guards, they can torch drop coverage, especially as deep as Illinois plays it with Tommy. I think some of the guards Illinois played, and when you do step up in competition, a team like Kentucky that has so many good shot makers and guys like Butler and Owe who are so good, just kind of getting downhill, I think those guys just are so comfortable attacking that, and you have to make guys uncomfortable. In Illinois, that's one thing they do not do defensively is make teams uncomfortable at all. And I think that's where I'd like to see maybe a little shift happen.
I'm with you. And I think that leads into the thoughts of what you'd want to see different from a roster construction standpoint, or what should be prioritized going into this offseason. I want to see a team that's more athletic. I want to see a team that's older. I want to see a team that's tougher. I think that those are all important things to be better defensively, to be able to handle physicality better at the other end. I know those are broad, easy things to kind of point out, but if I was Brad Underwood, I'm not trying to abandon shooting or to deny the importance of it. And obviously they didn't get it totally right this year in prioritizing, I think, first and foremost, shooting, offensive skill, positional size. You didn't shoot well enough. That's well documented. We know that. Do I want this to be St. John's of this year? Now, St. John's had a great year, but obviously we're flawed to where they couldn't make threes, and that was a big part of their undoing against Arkansas. I don't want it to be that, but I do think Illinois needs some more ruggedness, athleticism, and I think that could really help. I'd be willing to give up some offensive skill. I'd be willing to give up some shooting, or just I say give up. I don't want to say give up from 304th right now, but just You know what I mean in terms of trying to balance that out. I think that's important for Illinois going forward. That's how I would view it going into this offseason.
Yeah, because these last two Illinois teams, neither have been very good defensively, but you can get away with it with a team like last year's, who is so elite offensively and so hard to stop that you can just outscore teams. You're one of the most efficient offenses in the country. You've got such awesome individual offensive players that even if they have defensive shortcomings, you probably can get away with it. And then there's this year's team, which I think was built to try and be similar. Okay, we're going to have limitations defensively, but we are going to be a team that is a nightmare to guard. We're going to have shooters all over the floor, and we're going to play fast, and we're going to outscore teams. And if we're not an elite defensive team, that was kind of coming off of that Elite Eight team, which had a similar profile to, I think, what the vision was for this team. That's what Brad Underwood wanted. It didn't work out enough offensively with this group to make up for the defensive shortcomings. It wasn't good enough offensively, and I think that's part of the situation where if you actually had a team that fit the elite shooting, floor spacing, incredible offensive group that I think Brad Underwood hoped this team was, and I think the defensive conversation wouldn't have come up as much because I think Illinois would have been a lot better. But the fact that you kind of underachieved offensively, you didn't end up being the shooting team you thought, plus there were games where you just got torched defensively and you got run out of the gym because you weren't good enough offensively. That's where I think you got to maybe find a better balance there, because it's really hard to build an offensive team like the Elite Eight team a year ago was. Like a generational efficient offense. It's really hard to do.
And another thing about last year's team was you had transition as such a big part of who you were, because Terrence Shannon in the open court was phenomenal. Last year's defense was similar to a lot of these Brad Underwood defenses post him shifting from being so aggressive and trying to turn people over at such a high rate, where Illinois didn't turn people over much at all last year, similar as it's been for a handful of years, but they did get out on the break. One thing, though, I do think of is, number one, this year's team didn't get out and run very much because it didn't seem like the way it played out. I guess KJ seemed more comfortable playing a little bit more slowed down. Illinois didn't have the athletes to really get up and down the floor and blow past people. And then obviously you didn't get enough stops to then be able to go out and run. But that's another thing where I think Brad, in his things that he prioritizes and certain things that he really wants to have as staples of his team, I think transition's one of them, but I think you got to get more athletic to do that. I think you got to be able to, and I would like to see maybe a more aggressive defensive style allow you to run more. That's just me personally.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I just felt like this team, they're so skilled offensively, and yet nobody really blew you away with like speed, athleticism, maybe other than Merez at times. I think this team could get physically dominated by teams, and just teams that had length and athleticism really bothered this Illinois team, and that's something that really stood out for a lot of this season. And I do think that that's something I do like that point too, though, of like, yeah, just transition offense. And this was an Illinois team that ultimately, when you look at like the tempo numbers, they were one of the faster paced teams in the country, but it didn't really feel like that watching a game. It didn't really feel like you had the athletes and just the same level of pace that we've seen in the past. And I do think, I tweeted after the game, I'm like, off-season priority, older, quicker, more athletic, because I just think this team was young, not all that fast, and not all that athletic. And I think as much as there was a lot of skill and talent, I do think now, like you see a lot of these top teams in the country, especially the elite defensive teams, which I don't necessarily think, if, like you said, I don't think Brad Underwood's going to say, all right, give me St. John's and Houston's teams. Like, that's what we're going to build. Those teams are insanely athletic and it's switchable, and, you know, the bigs are freaks. Like, it's hard to replicate that type, but I do think that there is kind of a balance between the two that you can strike. And I do think that, yeah, for as good as like Will and KJ and even Kylan and Tommy, these guys are, they're very limited from a physical standpoint. And so I think infusing a little bit more athleticism could be beneficial for sure.
Lance on the Max Twin City Recycling text line. I don't know if this year we played fast as much as we took quick shots. Last year they played fast. They got down the court and scored a lot of fast break points. I don't think we did that this year. I know if you look into the analytics, like Kyle was saying, their offensive pace was high. I don't know if it was quite as high as last year, but it was top 100. but their transition numbers were not. They did not put a lot of production and usage into transition. So I think that plays into what Lance was saying of a team that was certainly seeing a green light in the half court and would take seemingly the first good shot available, that's something that Brad has even said in press conferences, if that's what they want to do. It wasn't them getting runouts and playing with numbers advantages or playing with a full head of steam downhill. 217, I think Boswell has the blow-by athleticism, but outside of that, we just lack straight speed. 651, definitely need to get twitchier in the offseason. We'll get to more of your texts when we return. 217-359-2255. Max Twin City Recycling text line. We'll be back. This is The Drive.
It's time to plan your summer swimming season. Urbana Park District is selling pool memberships to Crystal Lake Park Family Aquatic Center. Memberships are on sale through April. The pool opens Memorial Day weekend. Single, family, senior, and veteran rates available. Purchase memberships in person at Phillips Recreation Center, 505 West Stoughton, or at Urbana Indoor Aquatic Center. Call 217-367-1544 for details. Urbana Park District, you belong here.
Carpet Weavers Flooring and Furniture Gallery has savings store-wide for the anniversary sale. Installation is half off Mohawk's waterproof luxury vinyl floors. The installation is free for Mohawk Carpet. And get up to $1,000 instant rebate on Mohawk carpets and floors. Instant rebates on all furniture. Plus, buy it all 2 years free financing. Don't miss the anniversary sale going on now at Carpet Weavers.
Not every remodel project is as easy as the couple on the Home Improvement Channel make it look. From old furniture to construction debris, a home remodel can quickly turn into a junk pile. 2 Men and a Junk Truck is here to make your home improvement dreams a reality. They offer hassle-free junk removal and dumpster rentals to clear the way for your next big project.
Perfect.
Use code REMODEL25 to save $25 on your next service. 2 Men and a Junk Truck, making your home improvement journey a breeze. Visit 2menandajuncktruck.com. Offer valid at 2 Men and a Junk Truck, Champaign, Illinois.
Save up to 50% at the Hot Tub and Swim Spa Blowout Expo this weekend only at the Champaign County Fairgrounds. Browse a massive display of hot tubs, cold therapy tubs, swim spas, and saunas from major brands at up to 50% off. See swim spas in action, offering exercise, therapy, and fun all year long. Financing is available and admission is free. That's the Hot Tub and Swim Spa Blowout Expo this weekend only at the Champaign County Fairgrounds. Visit hottubshow.com. That's hottubshow.com.
Live the Champagne life with Champagne Center Partnership. Don't let summer pass you by. Make it unforgettable with Champagne Park District. Build a schedule that keeps you and your family engaged all summer long. Make a splash at Sholem Aquatic Center. Get creative with ceramics, drawing, or dance. Take the stage with the youth theater program and stay active with group fitness classes and sports leagues. Don't wait. Registration is open now for Champaign-Urbana residents. Visit champagneparks.org to explore activities and plan your summer of fun today.
Back on the Drive with Sam Piper, ESPN Radio 93.5. Should mention the Illini women fall this afternoon to Texas in the second round of the women's tournament, 65-48. That was a really and is a really good Texas team, 33-3 on the year, and a really good accomplishment for Shauna Green to get the first NCAA tournament win for the program in 25 years, despite the injuries, despite Makira Cook, your point guard, arguably best player, to be out for the season and still push forward and get a nice landing spot in the NCAA tournament, not to have to sweat that on Selection Sunday, and a very good year, and certainly continuing to raise the bar for the women's program. And that's got to be a decent way to send off those seniors, and to know that they just changed the standard of Illini women's basketball, and hopefully the future continues to be bright for them.
It's crazy how good those top teams in women's basketball are. You talk about even the men's tournament. I know is like, well, no drama, a lot of blowouts. Look at some of these women's scores, UConn won by like 79 in their first round matchup. Those teams are just insane. That Texas team, there's absolutely nothing to hang your head about losing. And they also do it in at the home sites there. But it was an unbelievable season. To beat Creighton, that was a heck of a win. First win in 24 years in the tournament for Illinois women's basketball? Was it 2000, their last
2000
NCAA tournament win? Just a remarkable season and an unbelievable senior class that completely transformed a basketball program. And I have no doubt that Shauna Green is going to continue to have this thing rolling.
Yeah, it's exciting that the progress she's made in such a short time, and the transfer portal. She's recruiting obviously really well in the high school ranks, but the portal will open up possibilities for them to maybe get some veterans to supplement to a Barry Wallace and everything else. Obviously, Destiny Jackson coming in as well as a McDonald's All-American, and will be a team continuing to be worth watching going forward. Let's get back to the text line. Big Def on the Max Twin City Recycling text line. You guys complained about the schematics of drop coverage all down the stretch last year, saying it didn't use Coleman's athleticism. If it was a problem again this year too, is it just a this year problem? I agree with Kyle mentioned the fact of this year's team. It did seem like roster build just really limited what you could do defensively, and that you just had natural shortcomings because you didn't have a lot of athleticism and you had average to below average defenders in a lot of positions. I think last year was a mistake to play Coleman in deep drop. I never heard, I expected maybe there would be a whisper of like, hey, Coleman's knee, just like we had to do it. Now, ultimately, I think Illinois just wanted to be good enough on defense, and they were fine being conservative on defense and letting their offense cook, essentially. And it took them on Elite Eight. Like I don't think you can run any defense against that UConn team. I don't think you beat them. But ultimately, I would have liked to see Coleman be able to play up in ball screens and switch, because I think that's where his value really was as a defender, being a versatile piece. But he did what they told him to do and sit back there, just didn't give you much rim protection, and there was a lot of open space. Although that was kind of playing in the analytics game. They're like, all right, the open space on the floor that we're going to let people get to is the mid-range pull-up, and they didn't think that anyone could make enough pull-up twos to beat their top 5 offense. And they were right in a lot of instances, but it did have weaknesses too.
I do think the defensive downfall of each team was different in that I do think it was scheme-based last year, because I think you actually had better individual defenders on that team, especially with the way Terrence was playing, plus with the ability that Coleman showed and had and the versatility he had. I think that was very scheme-based. I think that should have been a better defensive team last year. This year, I don't think it's necessarily a mistake to play drop coverage with Tomislav Ivicic as your center. I don't know how many options you really have. I think other things. Now, I would have liked to see them continue to stick with what they showed against Iowa a little bit more, just in terms of throwing different looks here and there, especially when you were playing guards that, like Josh Dix and Peyton Sanford of Iowa, where you were really worried about them getting to that mid-range pull-up or, attacking you downhill, getting to an 8-foot floater, maybe, that soft head show, that screen, whatever you want to do, just to throw a different look, force it out of their hands once or twice, make them think and react a little bit more. I would have liked to see Illinois just stick with some of that. In terms of like your base ball screen coverage being dropped with this year's roster, I don't think that was necessarily a huge mistake, because I don't think you really had a whole lot of other options. I will say, moving forward, it'll be interesting to see heading into next year what that big rotation looks like. Do you go all in on both Tommy and Merez playing together? Because I think that brings up a new conversation of what that could look like defensively. Even still, I think Merez Johnson will be playing the 5 for you at times regardless. When he's in there, that's where I'd like to see Illinois show a little bit more aggressive of a look, because I think he also has the capability individually, the athleticism, the mobility from that 5 spot to do a lot more than sit and drop. And that's where I would hope that maybe Illinois could kind of do similar to what UConn did with that national title team with Klingon and then Samson Johnson off the bench, where Klingon just sat and dropped and let everything funnel to him. Now, Tommy's nowhere near the defensive player he is. But then when you brought Samson Johnson in, he would like blitz every screen. He was mobile. He'd come out, and teams would just have to deal with which center's on the floor. How do I deal with this? I'm going to see two totally different looks. I just think that causes confusion, makes guys uncomfortable, and that's what I want to see more from Illinois.
I think that's well said. I agree with that. We'll get to more of your texts as we go along. We'll also talk about let's do our final, as we go into the offseason, rankings of who we would want to keep if we are Illinois basketball and where that stands. And is there a shift in the power rankings as we go into it? The transfer portal is fully open today. We can talk about what Illinois needs and what should be a big priority as they push forward in building next year's roster. All right, a lot still to do. We'll be back. This is The Drive.
You're listening to WSJK ESPN 93.5 Tuscola, Champaign-Urbana, your home for the St. Louis Cardinals.
And dealerships are domestic terrorism.
And the FBI says that it has launched a task force in conjunction with ATF to, quote, coordinate investigative activity and crack down on violent Tesla attacks.
Fox's Jonathan Hunt. Police in Austin, Texas say several incendiary devices were found under vehicles at a Tesla dealership earlier today, just days after several vehicles were set on fire at a dealership in Las Vegas. Tesla CEO Elon Musk says his Doge team making government efficiency cuts gets daily death threats. Ahead of new tariffs, a major automaker is expanding in the U.S. Fox's Jared Halpern at the White House.
Executives from Hyundai joined Louisiana leaders and President Trump to announce a $20 billion investment in the U.S., including a $5 billion steel facility in Louisiana.
This investment is a clear demonstration that tariffs very strongly work.
The president attributes Hyundai's expansion and investments from other manufacturers to tariffs being imposed next month.
Hyundai will be producing steel in America and making its cars in America. And as a result, they'll not have to pay any tariffs. You know, there are no tariffs if you make your product in America.
America is listening to Fox News.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
Just getting word that Postmaster Louis DeJoy is resigning just days after asking the Musk-led government efficiency team for help with a number of issues. It's Ukraine's turn again after the latest U.S. talks with Russia in Saudi Arabia.
The 25-strong Ukrainian delegation had been waiting for American and Russian officials to wrap up their talks, the two warring parties reportedly occupying different floors of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Now the U.S. and Ukraine will resume discussions. They say one goal is a deal to safeguard shipping lanes on the Black Sea. Ukraine wants to export grain. Russia wants to export fertilizer and have some sanctions lifted. There's no word if the two sides are any closer to agreeing the comprehensive 30-day ceasefire proposed by President Donald Trump. Jonathan Savage, Fox News.
Canada's new prime minister visits a town that took in stranded travelers on 9/11 and talks about lamenting a friendship lost.
In a campaign stop in Gander, Newfoundland, Prime Minister Mark Carney noted that the town of just 10,000 people took in nearly 6,600 airline passengers when the U.S. shut down airspace on September 11th, 2001. Locals offering food and spare rooms to travelers. The action was immortalized in the hit Broadway musical Come From Away. Carney said Canadians have historically stuck by Americans, like during the Iranian hostage crisis and the recent California wildfires. His remarks come in the wake of President Trump's trade war with the U.S.'s northern neighbor and Trump's continued call for Canada to become the 51st state, a position that has angered Canadians.
Fox's Tanya J. Powers. Carney also telling reporters he assumes President Trump is waiting to see who wins Canada's general election before holding a call with the winner. Wall Street may be hoping there's less potential for negative impacts from tariffs. The Dow finishing up 597 points, the S&P up 100, the NASDAQ up more than 400. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News.
Hello again, everyone. Let's check weather for Eastern Sonora, Champaign and vicinity. Going to be a mostly sunny, windy day's worth of weather. Temperatures none too far off seasonal norms. And about 53. The west wind, though, 20 to 30. And gusty will begin to subside later this afternoon. Tonight, increasing cloudiness. Weak weather system via the plains will introduce maybe a few sprinkles after midnight down to 37. With a diminishing west wind further through the night. For the day tomorrow, considerable cloudiness. And a high of about 54 with a little spotty, patchy light rain or sprinkle activity both morning and afternoon. That'll move out here later tomorrow night, low down to 34, partly sunny up to 56 on Wednesday with a northwest to northwest increasing clouds and maybe a shower late Thursday afternoon with a high near 60. Breezy, warmer weather for Friday into much of the weekend, but showers are across the area and they are going to be much needed with dryness and dry to mind. 74 on Friday, 72 on Saturday, upper 60s to near 70 on Sunday. A brief dry spell early next week before more rain and a more significant warm up to follow. For Stevie J Broadcasting, I'm your host, Greg Solier.
It is The Drive with Sam Piper, ESPN Radio 93.5. We'll continue to talk all about Illini basketball. Their season ends yesterday in Milwaukee, 84-75 against the 3 seed Kentucky Wildcats. They're moving on to Indianapolis to play Tennessee. Illinois can now dive fully into the transfer portal, their off-season checklist, and we'll talk about what that should include and retention, of course, as high as anything on that list. What should that look like? I wouldn't say speculated, but we've offered up opinions in terms of where we would put the pecking order of who you'd want back, how much, and how that shakes out, and been willing to move some pieces around as needed, which there have been some needed adjustments, especially for me. I had Kylan Boswell too low after the Wisconsin game, had Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn above him. No knock on Dre or no disrespect, but obviously that was dead wrong, and I'm happy to admit that, hand up. Kylan deserves to be higher than him and maybe even higher than where I've had him, so we'll get to that. Did want to address something real quick. Ken mentioned on the Max Twin City Recycling text line, congrats to Derek on becoming Kentucky fans' favorite reporter yesterday. That was fun. I didn't necessarily mean that or expect that, but
you got a taste of how insane some of these Twitter fan bases are. It goes from like, oh, I'm just going to make some harmless tweet here. 500 replies in like an hour.
Unbelievable. And Jeff Goodman's had a long-standing top 10 craziest fan bases. I think Kentucky usually is number one, or they're a top 3. And I got to taste that yesterday. So if you missed it somehow, I tweeted that there were a couple of Kentucky media people there with credentials that were wearing Kentucky shirts, gear. And I decided to say, all right, there's some Kentucky reporters with UK gear on. All righty then. And then my mentions exploded, and I got people tried to dunk on me and say all kinds of crazy things about me. So I got to experience maybe a little bit what it was like to be a player or whatever, with just angry trolls in my mentions, but no harm, no foul. I'm good, and they got to say what they wanted to say.
Oh man, yeah, Kentucky fans. Those fan bases, man, on Twitter, don't rile them up for any reason.
I guess not. No.
It's just insane. Because I saw you tweet that. I'm like, oh, man. And then I looked back later because I saw it pop up again. I think someone responded to it. I'm like, does that say 420 replies? Wait a minute here. What happened?
And I loved how some people in the media, I think around, I didn't spend too much time caring what people said or who said what, but like, oh, and what's wrong with that? Like, I don't know. That's
just goes to show the professional that you are versus how some other people go about things.
I guess I should have dug up my 2011 Orange Crush shirt somewhere, which if I even still have it, that's obviously not how I roll, but whatever, put that behind us.
Is it just like, and I don't want to single anything. It's like one outlet that does this, right? For Kentucky, that's like kind of a fan base.
I think so. Kentucky Sports Radio, KSR, is a big outlet there, and I didn't spend too much time like looking at press like who was from where. I just know that there were credentialed press walking in with like one had just a straight up Kentucky Wildcats hat on, and one had a shirt that was just like you'd see in a fan section, and I was just like, I've never seen that. I've done this for 10 years. I've been what seems like a million places for basketball games. I've never seen it. Now, admittedly, I've been out on the road too. You do the recruiting side of things, and the Kentucky media contingent usually is, when they're there. That they are. I don't know. I don't want to go too far, but
I think I have an understanding of what that means.
Yeah, but I don't know what in journalism school you kind of. You learn you're supposed to be unbiased enough, and people look, media. I don't want to go down like, let's do a media session and let's have a conversation about the different types of media. And yes, there are, as online journalism and writing has become more and more prevalent, you do get more of a greater mix of what is traditional and non-traditional media and all this kind of stuff. But I just think that how I've learned it, I can never imagine wearing or seeing anyone wear a Chief shirt on press row at State Farm Center. But that's just me. So we can move on from that.
It shouldn't be just you, though. I think that should be a very widely held opinion.
You're right. All right. So our pecking order. We've had it running here for a month or so, whatever it might be. We kind of circle back, and it's been a fun exercise to just think out loud and put names in these positions of how we'd stack these up in terms of priorities. And has there been a change now, Kyle, as we conclude this season? And you and I have both had for a long time now since we've been doing it, Tommy and Merez at the top. We went into the postseason with Kylan there shortly, really after the Duke game, and into that stretch of Michigan and Purdue where he played really well, and Kylan's been 3. So I'll let you go first. Are you shifting that at all, and we'll work our way down from there?
There's definitely some shifts that have been made. First of all, number one, there's a new number one on my list. That's Tomislav Ivicic. Needs to be the number one priority to me, because you saw in the NCAA tournament down the stretch of the year, he makes an offense. I mean, he makes your offense. He is what allows you to play the style you want to play. His ability to pop and shoot and pass. No, that's the number one thing. His passing ability from the 5 spot makes Illinois impossible to guard when he's out there playing at his best level. You saw Xavier have no answers. Now, Kentucky did at times, and I don't think that was necessarily Tommy's fault. He still made 4 threes in that game, but I think Tomislav, he could be one of the best bigs in the Big Ten next year. I think he can continue to build up his physicality, because I think if there's one knock you have on him, it's that he's not a very physical big. He's uncomfortable. Even when you saw him try to back guys down like Fremantle on Friday, just looks very uncomfortable playing in the post, and that's never going to be his game. But I think with another off season, and just the experience of playing in the Big Ten, I think you could see him even grow his offensive game more, which is hard to do because he's already a special offensive talent at the 5. So I've had Mores number 1 for a while, and I still love Mores. But in terms of maximizing next season, Tommy's got to be back because you cannot replace what he brings. So he's number 1, and then that's where it gets interesting. I'll first throw it back to you. Do you agree with that?
I like that pick. You can make an argument still, I think, for probably either of the top 3 of being number 1.
I think Kylan has made a push towards 1.
I was going to say, to be different in the way I'm feeling right now, I think when you mix in, and there's no wrong answer, I think especially if we have a conversation, should be, and I'll put this out to the text line, 217-359-2255, should Tommy be number 1? Should Kylan be number 1? Or would you go Mores? And we're open to different answers if you got it as well. But I'm interested in how people think about that. For Kylan's standpoint, I think the leadership and the culture part of it is really, really important as far as a carryover. I love the fact that after the game yesterday, he's talking about, number 1, being an active player and trying to keep this core together. He also mentioned that he wants to talk to Terrence again to pick his brain and try to find the best way to take the step, year 1 at Illinois to year 2 at Illinois. I just love that about him. He's giving off just great vibes of somebody that's driving the bus, driving the ship here for Illinois. And by the way, he's a downhill presence. He's a secondary creator. He can pass, and defensively, he's a lockdown defender as well. So I do think you're right, though, with Tommy because of, number 1, and I think it'd be hard to replace either one, but to try to go into the portal or go overseas and find your answer at the 5 would be difficult. Yes, you could maybe just say, all right, Mores is our starting 5 now, but Tommy does change you so much with his shooting. I mean, again, 9 threes in 2 tournament games.
You made 5 yesterday?
5 of 12. 5 of 12 yesterday. His passing, the fact you can actually run. One of the biggest criticisms for Illinois' offense is how little off-ball action they have. You actually have it when Tommy has the ball in his hands. You have cutting from the wings and the guards, and Tommy makes really, really good deliveries on those a lot of times. So if I wanted to be different from you and just present the argument of there is one to be made, I think I go Kylan because of some of the leadership stuff, but it'd be between him and Tommy in my mind.
Yeah, I won't argue with you if you want to go Kylan because I'm super high on him too. I desperately want him back. I think you need that leader, that guard. I just think the reason I would go with Tommy is because, like you said, both would be hard to replace. I think the impact that Tommy brings would be much harder to find as opposed to a guard that could make a similar level impact to Kylan. Mm-hmm. I just think that's easier to go get than, you can go get a portal big. You're not going to find one that does what Tommy does in terms of his spacing, his shooting ability, and his passing ability, his ability to be a creator, initiator for your offense at the 5 spot while also being 7-1, a great rebounder. I think there's room to grow in terms of his physicality in the paint. And I think he could actually take a step forward even just from being able to exploit matchups better in the post when he gets them, because I think that's something where he was just very hesitant, and even Illinois was hesitant to throw him the ball. Even I'm not asking him to back down like Cliff Amore of Alabama or anything. I just, he had mismatches and just he wanted to pass or he wanted to go out and shoot it. I think that's where he could take even another step offensively to where all of a sudden you've got an All-American caliber big man. And even though I think, does he limit you defensively a little bit? Sure. He also does. He's not horrible. He's 7-1. He impacts shots. When he's sitting there at the rim in that deep drop coverage, he is affecting things. And I think he's a very high IQ guy. So I just think you got to get him back because you can't find anything that comes close to what he's able to do from the 5 spot. And you even saw opposing coaches all year long this Ivisic, I don't know what to do with him. I mean, when he's making shots, how do we guard Illinois? So I think he's got to be number one for me, as much as I'm super high on Kylan too. But I do think those are 1A, 1B for me.
Yeah, and I think with Tommy, I would love to see him have a full off season with Orlando Antigua and Adam Fletcher. I think that's something that could benefit him. Conditioning-wise, continue to improve there. And just have a season where he doesn't get mono and then turn around and get the flu. Like,
good point.
A couple weeks later, like that's something that he could certainly benefit from as well. I agree as far as the makeup, just kind of the prototype of the player is harder to get with Tommy probably than to get with Kylan. Although if you were to go get a portal version of Kylan, you don't have the established alpha leader buy-in with Brad in Illinois and that type of thing. That would be something that would be lacking there. I just feel like Kylan is going to be and turned into the number one unquestioned leader, and that is such a valuable thing that really good Illinois teams have had, whether it's Io, whether it's Terrence. And I'm not saying he's going to be the player that Terrence was in year 2 at Illinois, because I don't think he will be, but I do think he can be one of the best guards in the Big Ten. And possibly even in the conversation beyond that nationally. One note on Tommy, though. Who would you rather have, Tommy or Owen Freeman?
Tommy.
Like, by a significant margin,
yes.
Right? And Owen Freeman's going to be an expensive portal ad for somebody.
If Tommy hit the portal, I mean, he'd have every program in the country call him. I guarantee you, if Tommy hit the portal, you'd have Kansas and you'd have, Kentucky with Mark Paul. Like, everybody would want the guy.
Yep.
He'd be one of the highest paid players in the portal.
So I think that tells you what replacing him would be like.
Yes.
So, all right. Are you going Kylan 2 then? Or 1A, 1B, you said?
Yeah, I'll 1-2. Yeah, Tommy 1, Kylan 2.
Okay.
I think those guys have surpassed Merez for me. It has nothing to do with Merez as a player. I still think he'll be a monster. I desperately want to keep him. I just think as I've kind of thought through things and as we've kind of seen the core of this year's team progress a little bit and just knowing what you know about college basketball now, focus on next year. As much as 3 years of Merez is really enticing, I'm framing it in my own mind as like next year I think is a really good opportunity for Illinois to have some continuity and to really have some of that carryover lead to another step forward from what this year's team already laid. And I just think, I'm not thinking about the junior and senior year Merez. I'm thinking about sophomore Merez, and I think he would be behind Tommy and Kylan for me. But he absolutely is somebody I want to prioritize because I do think as a 4-year player, he could have an unbelievable career. And I do think even just from this year to next year, he can take a humongous leap, especially with, from an offensive perspective. And you just know what you're getting from the guy. And he's one of those, like, dog, tough types of culture guys that you want around.
Absolutely. Scott says on the Max Twin City Recycling text line, his order, Boswell, Tommy, Merez, and Trey. Do you agree with Trey being 4?
Yes, yeah. The end of Trey's season has catapulted him 4th. I don't know if there's really another option behind him that would have anywhere near the impact that he could have on next year's team.
Ben, DGL, Ty, those would be other options, but I would, by a pretty significant margin, put Trey there.
It's part of getting older, too, staying older. That a senior who's played 3 years, really he started 3 years of high major basketball, really experienced, and showed flashes of brilliance this year. He was very inconsistent. I think that's the one thing that I question for next year with him. Like, do you say, okay, I want him back, and boom, start him at the 3? Like, no questions asked. He's a guy we're rolling with in a 30-minute-a-game starter-level role. I think it's possible. I don't know if I, want to pound the table for that to be the case, but I do think I would like to have him back, and I just think that's another really nice veteran leader type to have a second year in the program and to keep that continuity. And I just think he gives you some things that others maybe don't, just from that wing and just his off-ball movement. I think he is probably one of your best athletes in terms of getting a little more athletic. I think he already provides that. And I think he has some untapped potential still from a defensive standpoint and just getting a little bit more consistent offensively.
Yeah, I think that his development will be important if he can improve or build on what he did from a shooting standpoint late in the year. That would be a big deal, especially if you are going to play Merez and Tommy together a lot. I know that's a conversation that still we can discuss. There's all a million angles with this for Illinois basketball, and we got a lot of time to focus on the future of the roster. But if there have been, which you brought up before, questions about can Trey and Merez play a lot together. Trey did shoot the three better down the stretch, a lot better actually down the stretch than he had been for the bulk of the Big Ten season. But if it is for him, depending on who else you would add, like Trey's like a starter / maybe a sixth man, like I'd be good with that.
Yep.
If he's down with that, then I would want him back in that kind of a role. All right, we'll talk more as far as how your orders would be. 217-359-2255, Max Twin City Recycling text line. Then we can get some broader thoughts on the tournament and what we saw through the first two rounds and go through some of the results and check in on Kyle and I's bracket and see how
we can pass up on that.
Because apparently we had the same bracket, at least the same Final Four ultimately. But before we do all that, let me do a little bit of work. Let me tell you about Busey. It's tax planning time. Taxes can be taxing. Rethink tax time with Busey. Their associates are here to help. Expert advice and innovative products and services. Tax day is quickly approaching. That's Tuesday, April 15th. You want to avoid costly penalties and keep money in your pocket by contributing to retirement accounts by April 15th, organizing your records, filing electronically to pocket your refund faster. Did you know less than 1% of electronic returns have errors compared to 20% of paper returns? The typical taxpayer receives nearly $3,000. Make the most of your refund this year by paying down bad debt, building savings, retirement, and investment accounts, or establishing or restoring an emergency fund. Tax laws are complex and change frequently. The experts at Busey suggest you consult your tax advisor before making investment and tax decisions. Visit Busey.com or stop by one of their many convenient locations to get started today on your maximum refund. Busey, member FDIC.
Well, tell me, Tim Onsett, lawn mowing season soon, Dixie Chopper, dedicated diesel. It's off Route 45 as you're heading toward Rantoul. You turn left on Triumph Drive till you can't drive anymore, and you'll be right there. And you got some Dixie Choppers I could buy.
Oh, yeah. Andy's got his hands full with Dixie Choppers, and stop by, see Andy, get a great deal on a mower.
Fastest mower you can buy, so you don't have to spend 2 hours out there. You might spend 45 minutes, and plus, Andy can tune it up or fix it.
Sure he can. Yeah, we got a full shop ready to go. Whatever you need.
When it comes to early on here in the spring, it can be, weeds up to your mid-thigh or whatever. So sometimes you need a really tough kind of mower to get through all that in the brush.
Well, yeah, these are built solid. They'll get through that stuff, and all of the structural components have a great warranty. So if something does go wrong, we can definitely get it fixed. Get Andy at Dedicated Diesel, 217-328-0562, or Dedicated Equipment on Facebook.
Take charge of the years ahead with a smart, sound investment strategy and business succession plan. Busey Bank's business and wealth management experts help you envision your best future with powerful insights and proven strategies. Building business and growing wealth since 1868. Busey Bank, proud to be the official bank of the Fighting Illini. Member FDIC.
I'm Justin Ike, co-owner of Fred's Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning, Electric, and Underground.
So, Justin, tell me what you see as typical when it comes to sewer repair. Give me a scenario.
Your sewer's backed up and somebody comes along and says, you need this repair for X amount of dollars. here's my price, and you don't think to go looking for another company or a second opinion because you don't feel like you have time.
So is it possible that you might get charged a little more because it's kind of a desperate moment? Do some companies do that?
Oh, absolutely they will. They know you're in a pinch. Typically, if you call us, me or Will can be out there within an hour to look at that problem for you. Whether you call me first or you call me second, make sure you give me a call.
Anything else, Justin?
You can always trust Fred's.
Great to know. Thank you. That's Justin Ike, the co-owner of Fred's Plumbing, Heating and Air Conditioning, Electric, and Underground. If you want more information about this great 45-year family-owned company, just go to fredscu.com. That's fredscu.com.
Mom, she won't stop touching me. Broccoli stinks.
Guys, no phones at the table.
Family dinner time? Not easy. But you know what is easy? OSF On-Call Urgent Care. When you need convenient, affordable care for minor illnesses and injuries, you need OSF On-Call Urgent Care. Be seen in person or connect 24/7 online when and where you need it. Learn more at osfoncall.org/urgentcare.
It's time to plan your summer swimming season. Urbana Park District is selling pool memberships to Crystal Lake Park Family Aquatic Center. Memberships are on sale through April. The pool opens Memorial Day weekend. Single, family, senior, and veteran rates available. Purchase memberships in person at Phillips Recreation Center, 505 West Stoughton, or at Urbana Indoor Aquatic Center. Call 217-367-1544 for details. Urbana Park District, you belong here.
Sarah Champagne's Ben Quattrone on keeping his employees.
It's got to be the place to work. We have to pay the best. We have to treat people the best. Some of the guys wanted to order pizza the other day. Well, we bought 30 Papa Del's pizzas. BMW had the best month they've ever had. They said, can we have a cookout? Saturday, I cooked like 50 ribeye steaks. And they were expecting like cheese, burgers and hot dogs and stuff. Like, if I'm eating steak, you're eating steak. We both eat steak, we both eat hamburger.
Learn more at sarahchampagne.com.
Jet's Pizza is offering a special deal when you spend $25. Just use promo code 5ADD. That's the number 5ADD and specify Jet's bread or cinnamon sticks for only $5. Combine that with their current $5 off pizza promos and you can cheer on the Illini while enjoying hot pizza with your favorite Jet's bread or cinnamon sticks. What a deal. You spend $25, enter 5ADD for Jet's bread or cinnamon sticks for just $5. Jet's, better because it has to be.
Join Cunningham Children's Home on April 4th and 5th for the 21st Annual Festival of Quilts. It's a celebration you don't want to miss. Enjoy a stunning quilt show and sale, shop for home decor and gifts, enjoy home-baked treats from the bake sale, take a campus tour, and more. This tradition is more than just a festival. It's a chance to raise critical funds for the youth and families Cunningham serves each year. Don't miss the Festival of Quilts, April 4th and 5th. Visit cunningham.org to learn more.
Back on the Drive with Sam Piper, ESPN Radio 93.5. Okay, what's next for Illini basketball? Kevin on the Max Twin City Recycling text line. Do we go portal experience for a point guard and also the vibes on Ty Rodgers? I'd say updated vibes on Ty Rodgers. I don't really have a big update as far as that goes. I kind of just am still siding with what seemed to be some pretty clear writing on the wall when he decided to redshirt. Jeremy Warner caught up with him there in Milwaukee and some of the locker room availability before the Xavier game, the day before. And Ty didn't want to really get into the details that led him to his decision. He said, I'd rather not talk about that publicly right now. But from a fit standpoint, I still stick with what I've said previously. Like, his role wasn't what he wanted it to be because he has flaws as an offensive player. He's not a shooter, and guys ahead of him, and I would expect guys to be ahead of him and him still to be a flawed shooter going into next year. So I don't think Illinois will I think they'd be open-minded to Ty if he said, hey, I'm interested in coming back in whatever role I earn and that type of thing. But I don't think that's going to be the way it goes. I would expect him to want a pretty significant, more guaranteed role than he had, because otherwise he wouldn't have redshirted if he didn't care about that. And I think that he'll just be a better fit going somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of just mentally thought that he's not a part of the future of this team. I'd personally be really surprised if he was, or he did want to come back. I think it's just one of those situations similar to Sincere Harris where it'd probably be a similar role that he was going to have on this year's team next year. And why would you redshirt last year and then all of a sudden, oh, okay, I'm fine with it? Then I just think it's a situation where he'll probably want to seek other opportunities. I do think he does fit a lot of what you said and what we talked about in the first hour in terms of maybe sacrificing a little shooting and the offensive upside for more of a tougher, athletic, defensive-minded type of player. I think he fits that. I do just think ultimately, can he and Merez share the floor together? I've always thought that's really problematic. If you bring Trey White back in a big role, all of a sudden Ty Rodgers probably falls back into the role that he was going to have this year. And then, I think some of those lineup combinations could just get very limited pretty fast. And so I think it's one of those situations where probably both parties will be okay in a situation where he just wants to see what else is out there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that for sure. And I think that Tim Anderson no longer being on staff just adds one more stone on that side of things too, of him going somewhere else, because that's the guy that was the biggest reason why he was at Illinois, his relationship and the ties to the Mean Streets program. And so we'll see. We'll have to see. There have been surprises before as far as stay or go decisions, and there will be conversations between players and the staff as we go through this week. And I think we'll have a lot more clarity, probably before too long, on him and on a couple of other guys that have these decisions to make. So to go back to Kevin's first question, portal experience for a point guard, I think that's the number one priority, in my opinion. I think that you could maybe look at and talk me into different things depending on what the player might look like. If you want to say, I know we had a text earlier about how big athletic wings gave Illinois problems this year, and if you wanted to say that was a need, I could hear you on that. But I think a playmaker next to Kylan, not saying Kylan can't do any of that. I think he's better suited, though, for a secondary playmaking role still, personally.
That was going to be my one question, is does it have to be a point guard?
I don't know that it has to be like a every possession run through them guy, but I think I would prefer it to be a point guard. Personally, I'd prefer it to be a point guard, but at least a very good on-ball playmaker who can score for themselves. I'll let you talk more about that because you were hitting on that during one of the breaks. But I think experience is important, in my opinion. I'd want to double down. I'd want to, similar to seeing TJ and Coleman come back, if you were to get Kylan, Tommy, Merez, and Trey White back, I'd want to throw in a veteran guard with those guys and go all in on being old and say, let's just rock and go as far as this thing can go in 1 year. So I think that as of right now, I would say that's the number one priority. I would expect that to be the number one price tag item on Illinois' offseason. And but of course, as of right now, I couldn't point to a name for you and say this is the guy. But I think that over time we'll see what's out there.
It's probably got to be one of the best players on next year's team. Is that piece right there, right? It's got to be.
You'd hope so.
One of your leading scorers. That to me, I agree with you. I think I'd like it to be somebody who can play on the ball, who can be a playmaker, who maybe takes, similar to KJ. I don't necessarily know if it has to be as high usage on ball type as KJ was for this year's team, because I do think Kylan can handle maybe more next year as a senior, and I think he's very capable. I do think in an ideal world, though, Kylan is more of your secondary ball handler and plays off the ball more than on. So I do think, point guard is probably where I would go. I just think in general it needs to be a guard that can go score and a guard that can be a shot creator for themselves one-on-one, because that's what I think really you're losing the most with these two freshmen leaving more than anything, is those were your two guys that one-on-one individually could go get you one and could create offense for themselves, could make shots for themselves. Late in the game, you could put it in their hands and feel like they can create a shot. As much as I like the returning core of Kylan, Trey, Merez, Tommy, you don't have any guy in that four that can really do that. Kylan a little bit, just not really his game. He's not a good off-the-dribble shooter, as we've seen this year. I think that needs to be a guy that can be like your go-to scorer more than anything. Like I think that's really what you're missing from that core. I think Kylan can be a high-level scorer next year. I think Tommy will score a lot just based on how the offense runs. But in like a bucket getter, I think needs to be part of whoever that player's game is, and a guy that can go create an individual shot. Because ultimately, really, you see it this March, like that needs to be a guy you have. You need to have a trusted individual scorer. And I think that's really what you're losing the most with KJ and Will.
No, I fully agree with that. No doubt about it. And just that bucket getting potential. And maybe, this is going to sound dumb, but like an Ayo Dosunmu type. Oh, Piper says, let's go get an Ayo. That sounds like a good idea. An All-American. But a guy who maybe isn't a flat-out point guard, but he is a playmaking guard who can make people better, but also just go get you points.
Yes.
You can run him in ball screens, and he can pull up jump shots. He can go to the rim. He's in transition, but could he be effective off the ball next to another guard like obviously Trent Frazier, Andres Feliz? He doesn't have to be the point guard every time down the floor. He maybe isn't even the prototypical type of PG. So I know that admittedly maybe sounded dumb on the front end, but it could just be a guy that is very capable of playmaking, but like I do agree with you as far as just can create his own offense is going to be probably pretty important.
I'm trying to think if there's a better example of a recent transfer. I don't know if I can come up with one. I know exactly what you were getting at with Ayo. You're not getting Ayo Dosunmu, but the type of player. Again, you're not going to get a guy this good, but like what Bryce Williams was doing for Nebraska this year, he wasn't a point guard, but the ball was in his hands all the time, and he just made clutch shot after clutch shot. He was their go-to scorer.
Yeah.
You're not getting a guy who's averaging 20 in the Big Ten unless maybe again, it's not like go get this type of player, this level of player. But I don't know if there's a better example, but I think you summed it up well. That's what I'm looking for. I think scoring has to be a big part of it. As much as I do think ball handling, playmaking is a big part, I almost think the bigger need is like an individual scoring threat and a guard who can just go beat you off the dribble, go make a shot, late in the game type of, almost like maybe your leading scorer on next year's team might not be on the team right now. Kylan and Tommy could be that, but a guy with scoring upside from the guard position.
Yeah, and I think they're not a one-for-one. They're not the same player, but we've talked about before Dame Sarr from Italy being a Will Riley replacement type, and you're not going to have as much shot making out of him based on the way that he profiles. He's more of he's a better athlete. He's a better defender. He can make plays with the ball in his hands going downhill and facilitating, but Will is more of a natural just shot maker. So I do think maybe adding two wings, you would get a Sarr type and then maybe more of a proven bucket getter or just shooter on the wing as well, and probably a veteran in the portal ideally as far as that goes. We are getting some Josh Dix questions. Illinois has been linked to him. I've heard that Illinois is making him a big priority on the front end of this transfer portal cycle. That's a guy that can definitely shoot it. He averaged close to 15 points a game this year, just shy at 14.4, 42% from three on 5 attempts per game, Can obviously score it really well in the mid-range. About 3 assists per game as well. So somebody that, not a black hole of an offensive threat, a guy that can see it a little bit.
I think that fits the description of what we were talking about pretty well.
6'6", 210.
He's that type of guy, I think. Is there any chance that Illinois could reel a guy like him in?
He's from Council Bluffs, Iowa. We were talking about this off the air. Some of the teams, especially one notable one, is very close to his hometown. Creighton, just across the state line in Nebraska, is about 5 to 10 miles away. And you could see how he would fit in Greg McDermott's offense.
I was going to say, I think he'd be an All-American candidate playing for Greg McDermott. He feels like the perfect fit there.
Yeah, I think Kansas is another team that has been involved. Iowa State sounds like they've been involved. I don't know that he's an Iowa State type of player, but although they can get, they can have plus defenders, athletes all over, and then shooting is. I'm not saying that Otzelberger's against that type of a player. We talked about it off the air. Is he a good defender? I mean, he played at Iowa. It can't be probably that great of one. Admittedly, I don't know. I think that he's solid enough athletically to be serviceable, but I don't know that enough. I have to go back and watch and see. But you're playing in a system where defense was so not prioritized. You didn't have enough defensive, of a floor around you to probably be successful there. So I don't know what that would look like, but from a shot-making standpoint, I would really like that at Illinois. I don't know what his price point is right now, but I get why they're making a push.
He checks the boxes that we were just alluding to of what that guard piece could and should look like. He doesn't really check the boxes of what we talked about earlier of getting more athletic, quicker, faster. I don't think that's really his game. So, I think he'd be kind of a perfect backcourt complement to Kylan, and he'd be that type of shot-making scorer, can beat you off the dribble, can make shots. I think that would be a nice fit. I just am curious if that's realistic or not.
I think it's a good question. I have to dig on that. I'll probably have a better answer later in the week. It sounds like from some early conversations I've had that Creighton will be tough, but we'll see where the negotiating goes and how much he'll want to stay really close to home. If that is going to be, there's some talk of his mom being sick, and that could be something that does sway it as far as his decision making goes. But we'll see ultimately what plays out there. I know JT said a Tonje type of player. I think anybody would sign up for that, no doubt.
Yeah, sign me up for John Tonje being on next year's team, and yeah, let's start booking the Final Four tickets.
Right. I think that really though, if Illinois wanted to find a big athletic wing and try to sell Terrence Shannon's development and usage, that could make a lot of sense. And they obviously didn't have a Shannon type. Those guys don't grow on trees. And if they were out there, they'd be pretty expensive, I would imagine. But
it's just going to come back to the would you take AJ Storr conversation again.
Someone did ask it. Someone did ask it again today.
I stand strong, no.
Ryan, I hate to bring him up, but do you roll the dice again on AJ Storr?
He checks some of those boxes. I can't get over the fact that he couldn't contribute to Bill Self's team, and that relationship didn't look like it was a positive one. I just am scared by that. And it'd be his fourth school in 4 years. Does he fit the culture type of guy you'd want to bring in? I just have so many questions about that I can't get behind it.
You'd have to be something would have to come of your digging into him or just your vibes and talking to him. I think he'd be worth talking to.
Sure.
And seeing where his head is at and his explanation of what went wrong and what he's asking for from as far as the price that it would take to get him. I think he'd be worth doing some homework on.
Fair.
I do think part of that homework would be Brad talking to Bill Self, and I would imagine that conversation steers him pretty clear of it. But I do think he'd be worth doing home. If you could get him at a discount, get him at a guy who has been humbled, who wants to find a program that will develop him and can push him and that will have him, I don't know, just kind of looking for a second chance type of thing, I'd be interested. But you'd have to be given some good vibes from your talks with him, the people around him, and that he would be different than what he was this past year. I don't know if you could gauge that. It's hard to do that in the portal, but yeah, beyond that, it would probably be a stay away. Wade says Mackenzie Mbako going into the portal.
He gives some really bad vibes to me. I'm sorry. He just, to me, not a team player, not a team guy, very individually oriented. I think Mike Woodson was very frustrated with him this year. Now, I'm not praising Mike Woodson's coaching ability, but he got benched at Indiana at a time this year, and there was a game where he played like 2 minutes. I just, again, I want guys that I know are going to fit into the right culture, the right mindset. I know Brad Underwood prioritizes that too. He, to me, feels like a guy who would be better suited going to a program, wants to hand him the keys and say, take as many shots as you want next year.
Yep. And that was a big part of that Elite Eight team, is just not only did you evaluate really well roles and guys that could fit around Terrence and Coleman, but you got vibes guys. You got guys that vibed really well in the locker room, that were about team, about winning, that were willing to ride it out when sometimes they had to sacrifice, and that's important. You don't need – you can really wreck your team if you bring in even just one wrong me guy, right? That could just totally set off the chemistry. So you got to evaluate that. I don't claim to know everything about, Mbako or Stores, another one of those guys, but that's something you got to be really conscious of.
Just from an outsider's perspective, those two guys are both super talented basketball players, but from an outsider's perspective, they fall very, very low on the vibes meter for me.
Yep.
So I just would be very cautious with both.
Yep, that's important. Last note, Big Def, if Trey comes back as your 3, you could probably afford an absolute stud to be our 2. And that's part of the game, man. It's trying to balance the resources, and you bring back this guy at this price, and that means you have this available for this, and that's going to be really interesting in terms of what it takes to get certain guys back and what they'd be down with and role-wise, and then here's what you have to then go work ahead. So that's the world of college basketball as it is right now. We're at the forefront of this offseason. It's going to be, as they all are, very eventful and winding and turning, and we'll see where it goes. So, all right, we'll be back to wrap up the show. Stick with us. It is The Drive.
You've set your financial goals. One kid plans to go Big Ten, the other Ivy. Your bucket list includes seaside sunrises and sunsets on the slopes, or perhaps a second home away from it all. Busey Bank can help develop the right investment strategy to take charge of the years ahead. Busey Bank, building business, growing wealth since 1868. Proud to be the official bank of the Fighting Illini. Member FDIC.
It's great when hard work and experience are recognized. Hi, this is Ryan Heiser, President and CEO of Fisher National Bank. I am thrilled to share that Fisher National has been ranked 7th in the nation as a top lender in mortgage loans among banks with asset size of $300 million to $1 billion by our National Banking Association. This recognition is a testament to our lending team's dedication and expertise. After all, better banking experiences start with local people and local decision making. If you're in the market for a new home or considering refinancing your existing home, let our team at Fisher National Bank earn your business and trust. We offer competitive rates with low closing costs, and we locally service almost all of our loans. Come see us with all your home mortgage needs and experience the top-notch service that has earned us national recognition. Learn more at fishernational.com or stop by one of our branches today.
Fisher National Bank. Exceptional communities, exceptional people. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Fighting Illini fans, your Illinois football team is coming off a 10-win season as Citrus Bowl champs. This fall, Illinois returns 18 starters from the Citrus Bowl victory, including star quarterback Luke Altmaier for a third straight season. Led by head coach Brett Bielema, the Fighting Illini are listed on nearly every major top 25 ranking for the 2025 season. Stay up to date on all things Fighting Illini football at fightingillini.com. We can't wait to see you back in Memorial Stadium this fall.
Want unbeatable prices on your next furniture purchase, but also seeking that local hometown feel? Look no further than Kelsey Furniture in Tuscola. Customers rave about their friendly, established staff, as well as their great selection, amazing prices, and second-to-none delivery service. They're a third-generation local business, and they've always got your best interests at heart. Find the look you love for less. Open 9 to 5 Monday through Saturday, but always available online at kelseyfurniture.com. That's kelseyfurniture.com.
Serving Champaign County with excellence, Deputy Sheriff, is that what I call you? Deputy
yep.
Sheriff.
Yes, sir.
It's Brandon Reestack, our Law Enforcement Official of the Month. Thank you for what you do every single day. It is greatly appreciated by most people, and the people that understand that you're to serve and protect and do all the things I need you to do, because I don't want to defend my backyard. The last decade, in my opinion, has been shocking that some of the public, not very many, think of you as the enemy almost. Was it frustrating that, you just kind of keep walking? And I think that takes great strength to know that they're not having a very good day. It's okay, and you can deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's frustrating, but you just got to keep putting a smile on your face and be positive every day and go out and do your responsibilities day to day and just keep a good attitude about it. And that kind of helps get through.
Plus, I can't shoot. You'd have to train me. Could you train me how to be somewhat accurate?
We could look into that.
Hey, thanks for coming in. Congratulations.
Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. It's Brandon Reestack, Law Enforcement Official of the Month.
All right, Kyle, the Sweet 16 is set. The Big Ten started off 10-0. Did take some losses here in the last day or so, but a handful of squads making their way to the Sweet 16. You got Maryland, you got Michigan, you got Michigan State, you got Purdue. What have you made of the Big Ten's stretch so far to get 4 in the Sweet 16?
I'm pretty shocked that Purdue and Michigan are still standing. I wanted no part of picking Michigan in my bracket. I went with UCSD. I'm so mad that they looked like they were so spooked for the first 5 minutes of that game, and then afterwards they outplayed Michigan for the last 35. If they just didn't come out so jittery and spooked by the big stage, I think they beat Michigan. And I was shocked they beat A&M. So credit Michigan, man. They look dead, and they won the Big Ten and are in the Sweet 16. Purdue, you got 2 of the best players in the country. I guess that you should probably put a lot more weight in that than we have. And the Big Ten showed up pretty well. I'm glad Illinois wasn't the first team to lose. That would have sucked.
Yeah.
If they were like 13-0 and then Illinois loses. So Wisconsin took care of that.
And that was a hell of a game. BYU and Wisconsin, got to see that one there in Milwaukee, watching with a lot of Wisconsin fans. And, man, BYU, their final 6 weeks of this season, the wins that they pulled off, the offensive show that they put on, they're a fun watch. And we talked about last week, Lon and I, a lot, Alabama versus Wisconsin, how much fun that game would be. BYU versus Bama is going to be just as fun.
Oh, yeah.
Coming up on Thursday. That'll be the first game that tips off on Thursday
There's
night.
some awesome matchups here in the Sweet 16. That's the one thing. Without the Cinderella teams, without all the upsets, you are getting some pretty amazing matchups in the second weekend.
Thursday, you get BYU, Bama. You get Maryland and Florida. Florida had to sweat one yesterday. Arizona will face Duke. And then Arkansas, who upset St. John's, will face Texas Tech. Friday, you get Ole Miss and Michigan State. I'm crossing my fingers that my Ole Miss, the Elite Eight, ends up going through and coming home. Tennessee and Kentucky, Michigan and Auburn, and Purdue and Houston. I will say Purdue did benefit from a nice draw for them.
They did.
Still getting a 4 despite – I know we're not – it used to be where the last 10 carried additional weight in a tournament evaluation. they still metrics wise, were pretty strong, but they were sliding down the stretch, and but the committee still gave them a 4 and getting to play. Who'd they play game 1?
High Point,
and then they played McNeese.
Yeah, you get 2 mid-majors. That's a nice little path there. Of course, Illinois benefited from that last year, so you got to take advantage, and Purdue did that. How about that Derek Queen shot, though? Unreal.
Yeah, off balance, off the window. We were due for a buzzer beater.
Yeah, we were.
There weren't a lot of down to the wire games in that first weekend.
That's it. That was an incredible shot. I don't know how you guard it better if you're Colorado State. It was Ethan Morton, for the former Purdue transfer,
right?
that was guarding the play.
Oh, wow.
And he contested it about as well as you can. You get him going to his offhand, away from the rim, a fall away corner shot that he has to perfectly bank in from a tough angle, and he does it. That guy's pretty amazing.
What an incredible year. I'm sure Mike Woodson being like, I was second in the Derek Queen recruitment. I was second in the Liam McNeely recruitment. Life is good. His life is